Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. I'm Cipher, and this is the Devil's Advocates Debate Club. Welcome back, everyone. I know I'd mentioned doing a video response to the leftist philosopher video response to me. However, I watched a bit of it, and as far as I can tell, he's not so much responding to any of what I said, but just giving a lengthy description of a couple of the terms that we'd used in our discussion. So I'm going to have to watch his video again and see if I can find something more substantive to respond to, or just do a short video saying, yeah, I agree with your description of those words, and describing the problem with his style of, I guess, response in general. So today I'm taking a request from one of my new viewers, Little Kosuna Kitty, and doing a second video on the subject of love. Last time I took a rather negative approach as to whether or not love was worth it. Definitely talking about a few of the pros and cons, but focusing a little bit on why you should save pieces of your heart for yourself, which is very important. To touch on that again, the basic idea was that every time you really truly fall in love, or at least every time I have, you give away a piece of your heart that you never give back. That person keeps it, and the next time you have to love in a slightly different way. Otherwise, did you really love them? I don't know. But for me, that's what it's always been like. That being said, while I talked about focusing on yourself and not giving away too many pieces, it definitely seems that as I get older, something a little bit unexpected happens, which is that you learn new ways to love. You grow as a person. For you video gamers out there, you get more experience and you level up. And as you do, your heart grows too, as long as you don't become too much of a cynic or watch too much of the mainstream media these days. So you find new ways to love. It might be a little bit safer than I had at one point thought to continue trying to find people to love, because, well, if you keep giving out pieces of your heart but keep finding new pieces of it to give out, there's certainly a loss, but you're certainly gaining experience as well. And someone who's recently become a close friend has said to me a couple of times when we were hanging out for the first time that it's important to focus on what you have, not what you might lose or what could be in the future. So in other words, when looking into a friendship or a relationship, rather than thinking about the future and the possible pitfalls or even possible potential successes, it's good to just focus on the here and now and enjoy what you have. Oh, sorry, it looked like my video was cutting out there, so I paused for a moment. Anyway, I definitely think that there needs to be a balance between enjoying what you have in the now and planning for the future. If you ignore the future and just optimistically assume that everything's going to be fine because, well, you want it to be, and come on, the world's a fair place, I should sometimes get what I want, right? Well, the problem is there'll be pitfalls which you could have avoided had you taken just a little bit of a closer look. So it's definitely important to plan for the future. But I have definitely been in situations and relationships and friendships where I spent so much time worrying about what would make them fail that was what made them fail. I like to think that I could predict the future because several of my relationships in a row, quite a few actually, I knew exactly how they were going to fail and predicted sometimes within days as to when my girlfriend would leave me, even though most people said that there were no signs of it, because, well, I knew what the failings were. I was looking for them, and by looking for them too hard and putting stress on the relationships, I created some of them. So it definitely needs to be a balance. You definitely need to enjoy what you have and worry about what you might lose. Otherwise, why bother with love in the first place? Now I just wanted to touch on the subject of love at first sight for a minute. This is something a lot of people don't believe in. but that I've experienced one too many times to know it's not possible. So the thing about love at first sight is people assume that this is like a true love when they talk about it. Oh, you'll be with that person forever. And that's not what love at first sight is. The English language definition of love is very broad and practically useless outside of its colloquial meaning. In other words, outside of what people have come to mean by it. Other languages have much more structured definitions of love, and many languages have multiple definitions of different types of love. My particular favorite to talk about being pragma, which is the lasting logical love, I believe out of the Hindu tradition in India, if I remember properly. I am afraid I don't remember the culture it comes from, just the type of love it is. But pragma is love based on reality, or based on how compatible you are in the long term and how well you plan together for the future, as opposed to how you emotionally feel about each other when you first meet. There are many people in the East with a pragma love who people in America, if they got to know them in their relationship, wouldn't necessarily say that they loved each other at all, because it's not necessarily that they have an emotional connection. They've just gotten to know each other well enough to know that they can work together and form a stable, sustaining, probably happy life together. Because that emotional love at first sight, I want you, I need you bond, that can be a trap. That certainly exists, and if you're lucky and you find someone you are compatible with on what I would consider to be a pragma scale, then you might have it work out for you both logically and emotionally. But love at first sight can lead to a lot of distractions. It can lead you to putting a lot of time into partners who won't last and a lot of times don't deserve you. So I'm not saying avoid love at first sight or ignore it. There are some people who I've barely met that I remember so well. There's only one or two people who I haven't gotten to know who've taken a piece of my heart, but I would consider that love at first sight, and I just never got involved. It's not always the right choice, the right time, or the right person. Just when you have an event like that, try and take happiness from it. Remember it in the future with a smile. And if you do get involved with someone who you have that first sight connection with, sure, have fun. Let your emotions pull you along for a little bit of a ride, but make sure that you're paying attention to how much you actually have in common with each other, and even if you don't have things in common, just how compatible you are. Because having things in common is great, but two people who have had basically none of the same interests through life, but are both just curious people in general, have a lot more to share with each other than two people who get along because they watched all of the same things growing up, or, until they got together. So don't shy away from someone just because you don't have very much in common, or cling to someone just because you do. Love is more complicated than that. Don't throw yourself into someone's life just because you find love at first sight. But don't try and claim to yourself that it doesn't exist. If we're all adults watching my channel, and sadly I know that we're not, then we know that it happens. That it can't always be avoided, and that sometimes, no matter how logical you try to be and how much you try to think things through, to put your emotions aside and put your best interests ahead of what your feelings want you to do, sometimes love is unavoidable. Sometimes it comes out of the blue and beats you over the head with itself. Sometimes, no matter how prepared or jaded or cynical you are, something comes along that surprises you. So, be careful with love. Don't hand out pieces of your heart willy-nilly. Make sure to keep some for yourself and keep finding those life experiences that help you form more. But don't run away from love. Don't cut people out of your life just because you're afraid of the pain. There are plenty of other good reasons to cut people out of your life, but that's a video for another day. And just remember that the more love you give, the more love the world will have. And there's not really a limit, I've found, to how much love is in a single person. At the end of my last at the end of my last video, I sung a small song on love, and I was planning to do just the same, a piece of one on this one, but nothing's coming to mind right now that would sound even remotely palatable coming from me today, and it does look like my lunch break is almost over. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm working, so I'm going to let you all go here, of course, with lots of love. Make sure to like and subscribe, but more importantly, leave a comment below and let me know what you think on the subject of love. Is love at first sight real? Is love worth giving to just anyone that you feel that way about? Or should we look for pragma? Should we look for the logical love that doesn't necessarily even have emotions behind it at all? I can't say that I have the answers, but I can say that I'm having fun looking for them. Let me know what you think below. As always, I'm your host, Cipher. Thanks for watching the Devil's Advocate Debate Club, and thanks especially to Little Kasuna Kitty for the suggestion. Have a good one.